Hello again. Here we have the first installment of Curbside Consults. I dedicate this video to my friend and colleague, Greg Quinlan, who runs Garden State Families. He sent me a text this morning. He had a question about whether or not the current COVID vaccines protect against the Delta variant. There was a report uh, that Johnson & Johnson had looked at 8 patients and had found that the antibodies in the blood of these 8 patients protected against the Delta variant. And they went on, the company went on to proclaim that their vaccine obviously was thoroughly protective and everyone should be completely reassured. I don't think 8 patients makes the case. So let's look at some of the other data. This is a paper published in the journal Cell, and Cell is a premier journal. Okay, the lead author was C. Liu, Liu, and they reported, and he must have had 2 or 3 dozen other authors on this paper, complete protection against the Delta variant. Given what they could discover with regard to the present COVID vaccines. But let's look at some of the particulars of this paper because I think it's important to understand the details. There are presently 15 vaccines that have been deployed against SARS-CoV-2 worldwide. Primarily, these vaccines target the spike protein. The spike protein is the business end of the virus that causes the disease that we know as COVID. We know that there have been thousands of mutations in the spike protein. Most of them are worthless, random, junk mutations, but some of them have conferred an advantage of the virus in being able to infect and make people sick. The most recent, of course, is the Delta variant, which is twice as infectious as the first Wuhan 1 variant. So the question has arisen, if there are all these mutations in the spike protein and the vaccines that were designed against the first spike protein out of Wuhan 1, do any of these mutations in the spike protein allow the virus to escape the defense that has been erected against it by these 15 vaccines? And the answer is it does not appear at this point that the Delta variant or the prior viruses that may still be in circulation have the ability to entirely punch through that protective wall. However, we have to look at the larger picture, don't we? That's a nice story. That's reassuring for the moment, but let's look at the larger story. There are approximately 7.4 billion people in the world. Of those, 160 million, so a very small percentage, 160 million people have survived COVID. And so we know based on a very, very good Cleveland Clinic study that if you have survived COVID, you more than likely have good, durable immunity against SARS-CoV-2, including the variants. This is what it looks like. So 160 million people around the world who have survived COVID are, at least the good news for them is they seem to be well defended. They have good natural immunity against the virus. There have been 3.16 billion doses of COVID vaccine distributed. So we've got 3.16 billion doses of vaccine and 7.6 billion people. So we have half the world population that has not seen a vaccine. What are we going to do about that particular situation where we've got half the world that's not seen a vaccine? Most of the world that has not recovered from COVID hasn't had the benefit of having COVID and recovered, I should say. And that is a problem because if you remember, if you've watched my COVID 101 video on the spike protein just is going to continue to mutate at random. And when it finds a winning lottery ticket, okay, it's going to take advantage of that advantage. And it will replicate and become the predominant form, as we now have in many countries with regard to the Delta variant. Okay, here I think is probably the most important sentence from that paper that was published in Cell. And I'll read it to you and I'll take it apart for you. As the population develops immunity, and the author is referring to the world population, so as 7.4 billion people develop immunity by either natural infection, right? So that's the 160 million people that had it and survived, or vaccination. That's about half of the world population. Pressure is mounting to select mutations, that is, pressure on the virus is mounting to select mutations that allow the virus to more effectively find an infectable host, that is, an innocent victim, through increased transmissibility. The mutations will naturally occur in such a way that when the virus finds a mutation that allows it to be more infectious, it's going to go in that direction. Or, and this is where the hazard is, or these mutations will allow the virus to escape the acquired immune response. That is, so you had COVID a year ago and you survived. That's great for now, but you know what? The virus is now mutating, and maybe someday soon we have a virus that can mutate and come back and get you. In the same way that the influenza viruses tend to do that, right? You have to get your influenza shot every year because there's a new variant, boom, comes back and gets you next year. To evade the acquired immune response and cause reinfection. So we have one gigantic gain of function study, if you understand that concept, where you've got 7.4 billion people, all to one degree or another, incubating this virus in such a way that we are applying pressure on the virus to get better and better and better at both escaping our own innate immunity and escaping the immunity that we are trying to erect with these vaccines. So that's a little scary, but it's better to know really what the map looks like, you know, what the war map looks like, than to just take some headline news that 8 people were completely protected against the Delta variant and okay, let's go to the beach. Okay, it's the 4th of July weekend. What I would consider myself, and I've already done this, and I would ask you to consider as well, given the fact that we've got this Delta variant, which is twice as infectious, and given the fact that it's now predominant in many countries and is very likely to be the predominant strain here in 3 weeks' time, it might be wise for the time being, not forever and ever, but for the time being, it might be wise to put your mask back on and to consider social distancing. I know how difficult this is because I took my mask off like everyone else did last month, and I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. I could go back to wearing red lipstick when I go to church. You know, I didn't have to worry about red lipstick ruining my mask. Okay, this was wonderful. And I have to tell you how hard it was about a week ago when I began to study what was going on with the Delta virus, and I thought, the Delta variant, and I thought, don't tell me I have to put that mask back on. And I've got to, you know, sit in this part of church where there's social distancing. I do not want to do that. But I look at the numbers and I think, let's just see where this Delta variant goes. And as a good friend, a good YouTube friend, and a very wise woman, Lynette Zhang. If you don't know Lynette Zhang's YouTube channel, you've got to go check her out, ITM Trading. She's just fantastic. And Lynette Zhang, who is a gold and silver trader, She says time and again, I would rather be 2 weeks too early than a minute too late. So as for me, I know not what other men may do, but as for me, I'm wearing my mask. Not that I want to. I'm going to do it for another 3 weeks and let's see where we are. And I'm mindful of social distancing. I mean, I'm a surgeon, so I'm like totally cool with washing my hands up to the elbows. But I think it would be wise, as my father used to say, a word to the wise should be sufficient. Masks, social distancing, try not to be in crowded places. Just be mindful that the Delta variant and this virus in general doesn't read our memos, is not interested in our vaccines, except in the way that it makes itself stronger. In the same way, I'll leave you with one analogy, which comes to mind right now in terms of tennis, men's tennis, right? The Wimbledon men's finals. So you remember years ago when Nadal was playing Federer, and I liked Nadal. I just thought he was cute and wonderful and fantastic. Okay, but he played Federer. He would play him in the finals or the semifinals, and he would lose, and he would lose, and he would lose. But we liked Nadal. We wanted him to win. Well, after about 3 years, Nadal started to win. Okay, now how did that happen? Well, Nadal was young and adaptable. Okay, and he played to his strengths. Okay, so he got stronger in his strengths. But in playing Federer, he learned how to overcome Federer's weaknesses. So Nadal got stronger where he could get stronger, but he adapted to Federer's weaknesses until he was able to beat Federer. And of course, I was thrilled with that. I'm sure Nadal was even more thrilled. But that's exactly what the virus does. So on one side of the net, you've got SARS-CoV-2, okay, that's adapting, strong to start out with and adapting. And on the other side of the net, you have 7.4 billion people trying to defend themselves as best they can. So far, it looks like we're up, I don't know, love zero or whatever it's going to be. I don't really know about how to score in tennis. I just know who I like. But we've got a problem. We've got a problem in center court. So give some thought to going back to the mask, at least for the next couple of weeks, social distancing, back to the hand washing. Don't freak out, and be somewhat confident if you've been fully vaccinated that you have some protection. If you've had COVID, you certainly have more protection. But stay tuned. I think that the urgency with which our public health officials are pressing for everyone to get vaccinated like tomorrow and the next day, I don't think that is going to address the present problem the imminent problem, iceberg straight ahead, Delta variant. I don't think we're going to be able to get to adequate vaccination. If everybody in the country gets their vaccine tomorrow and gets their second shot in 2 weeks, I don't think that we're going to have the kind of defense that we would hope in order to deal with Delta. I think we're going to have to deal with Delta in another way. Actually, I think there are other ways in which we can deal with Delta. More on that in maybe tomorrow's morning round. So until then, remember, the two best medicines are love and mercy. Until then,